lest we forget. We move on as if things have moved on. Okay? Just last week, we had this service in Russia where 21 caskets were out there. 21 families were looking at caskets that contained the remains of their young boys who got burnt in a fire. They were told, all right, they started burials. We're moving on. Investigations are ongoing. We don't know what caused that fire.
Yeah.
There are very many other deaths that have happened in this country. We don't know. Lest we forget, there are people who have died. There are families that are still waiting for answers. As you see there, police and acts of brutality where some people have died. You've seen people crying and wailing because they have seen their loved ones. You have seen the quarry where young men in quarry were being hoisted down by their neighbors to go through garbage, and within that garbage were human remains. Investigations are ongoing. Many people have died.
Because we can't forget, and I think that we're at a place whereby, unfortunately, we are dealt with a lot of rhetoric, and we're dealt with a lot of things that don't matter. We're also dealt with stories as though they can be swept under the carpet, and I think we've come to the place where if we do not continue to remind ourselves about what really is the dire situation, then we do ourselves an injustice by not speaking up and speaking out. When we hear of the millions of shillings that are taken from this country on a daily basis, or how things have been wasted, that's one thing that ought to be paid attention to. When we hear about the very many things that have not been done, that is what needs to be paid attention to. But if I'm just going to take what happened in Quarry a couple of months ago, we've forgotten about that. We've forgotten about the fact that people were killed, Kenyans were killed, and their bodies cut into pieces, whatever it is that happened to them, and they were tossed into a water-filled quarry. We also know that there was somebody who was arrested as an alleged perpetrator of these particular crimes. What else do we know about him? That he escaped from a jail cell here in Nairobi and has never been seen again. Who are these people who were killed and dumped in the quarry? We know of one person who was identified, and she was buried by her family. Who are the other people? Do we know whether there are other bodies that are underneath that quarry, under that water? What is the reason why we saw a few days after this was discovered that it was now in flames and that somebody was trying to destroy whatever was beneath? How much value do we actually place on life? And I keep saying that once you're able to do that formula, to bring up how much value you place on life, then it'll be much easier for you to connect the dots between the value placed and then the action that is taken towards their health, towards their education, towards feeding them, towards making sure that they can do 1, 2, 3 in the nation. But are we numb? Have we become numb as a society? Have we become numb as a leadership and government? That when people have been found dead and mutilated in the manner in which they have been, that it is easy in a day or two to forget. And I think what we're saying this morning is that we cannot forget. That we cannot forget that there's a responsibility of those who've been put in government as the vanguard of the people to ensure that once you see something like this, that you do all you can do to find out what happened, who did it, and make them and hold them accountable. We can't forget, because if we do, we can't blame anybody but ourselves.
We look at these killings, and now we've normalized killings. We've normalized hearing that somebody has died. Okay, in some cases, they've died under what we suspect to be the hands of law enforcement officers. In some cases, we don't know what happened. Take, for example, the case of Rita Waeni, right? An autopsy on the severed head of slain university student Rita Waeni revealed that she was strangled and later decapitated. Chief Government Pathologist Johansen Oduor remarked that following the conclusion of a post-mortem examination at City Mortuary, he also revealed that a blunt object had bruised Waeni's head. The main findings were that the head had been chopped off from the neck at the level of C5, that vertebrae on the neck. There was bruising on the scalp caused by a blunt object. We also saw some fractures on bones. I can comfortably conclude that the cause of death was strangulation, after which she was decapitated and her body dumped. The 20-year-old's family positively identified the severed head found in Kiambaa Dam in Kiambu County. Oduor had earlier, when he received the decapitated body of this young girl, he had said, I have seen many. And that's what Oduor deals with. Oduor deals with bodies. He does autopsies on dead bodies. Johansen Oduor said, I have seen many. I've never come across something as emotional as this. This young girl was killed, her body found without a head. The head was later found so many kilometers away from where the body was found, from where she was last seen. Do we know who killed this person? There's been suspicion here and there. Have police arrested the person who killed Rita Waeni? What about the family? What's the family going through on a daily basis? When people move on, do you think Rita Waeni's family has moved on?
No.
And, said, okay, time heals. They are still wondering, what happened? What did our daughter do to deserve such a death? And there's a person who has a responsibility to give answers to Rita Waeni's parents.
Absolutely.
And this person is paid by taxpayers every month. We are at the end of the month. They have received a salary. And they're supposed to be giving Rita Waeni's relatives answers. Not just Rita. Those many other bodies you've talked about in Kware. The many others that have been dug up in Shakahola over the years. Since last year into this year, we are still digging up more. There's somebody who has earned a salary today, and they're supposed to be giving answers to over 400 people who have said, we suspect our loved ones are here. There's somebody who is responsible for that. Unless we forget. We may forget and move on, but there are people who cannot forget, who cannot move on because there's no closure.
They can't forget. It doesn't make it any easier. It doesn't make it any less of a burden to bear that your loved one or the one who loved you is dead. But can you imagine a situation where you do not know? And let's just take June 25th as a date to start with. That 50 odd some days ago, there are many, many people who disappeared. Their family members do not know if they are dead or alive. We just saw, just so you can get an understanding, three men last week released from the hands of their abductors. We don't know who these abductors were. Their stories are still being told. Of the 3 men who disappeared somewhere in Kitengela and had been away for 32 days. They came back. Many would say that it was because of public outcry. Where are these young gentlemen? Let them go. What is the case? They were dumped in different parts of the city. How many more? Morioki's mother saw video of her young boy being bundled into a police vehicle on the 25th of June. Until today, Morioki's mother has not laid eyes on him. She doesn't know if her son is dead. She doesn't know if her son is being held captive somewhere. She doesn't know if her son has been abducted. She does not know if her son is being tortured every day. She does not know if her son is dead. She doesn't know. That's the picture that we paint of Kenyans in this country who've been taken, obviously against their own will. But for what purposes, till today, we still do not know. We still do not understand. We hear inklings of some of the things that they have said. People want to know why they were involved in protests. People want to know why they were involved in anti-government, whatever it is that you want to call it. But have we sunk so low that we can disappear people, not give any reason, not give any justification for their disappearance, and then they turn up on a lonely road at 3 a.m. one morning. Have we sunk so low? Have we devalued human life so much that you can torture people, keep them away for days on end, for almost months, and the families of those that they love and those that love them have no idea what is going on in Kenya today, against the backdrop of a promise where such disappearances would never happen again? How many are dead?
Many.
How many are floating along some river somewhere?
Many.
That they will never know about?
Many.
How many are locked up somewhere and their parents, their husbands, their wives do not know where they are? How many? And why is it okay to wake up every day in this country with security agencies and an executive and administration knowing that those people are knowing that they've disappeared? How is it okay to wake up every day and to go about business as usual with that hanging in the balance? How is that okay?
How is it okay to report to work? Okay, to report to Parliament and go and just put it as a figure. So there's conflict between two government agencies. One is the state-funded Commission on Human Rights, and the other one is the state-funded security apparatus. How many people died during the demonstrations countrywide around June and July? Okay, one says 60-something, the other one says 40-odd. Which is which? Let's put it as a number.
Let's even
47.
say.
Okay? To those in government, 47 is just a number. But 47 are names of people. 47 is 29-year-old Wanjiko. 47 is 22-year-old Kagwera. 47 is Rex Masai. 47 is Kelvin Odhiambo. 47 are people. And people who are buried. And their parents and siblings and uncles and aunties and relatives just know that we know Rex was a good guy. And I was just called in the middle of the night and told, Rex has been shot. And I was told, go and identify him at the mortuary. And I went there and I found, yes, Rex had been shot. And we had to start organizing to bury Rex, to bury Wanjiko, to bury Kagwera, to bury Calvin Odhiambo, to bury... It's not 47.
It's not. And what were their crimes?
It's people. And lest we forget, nobody is in court today to answer for the death of this 47. So let's say, according to Professor Kithure Kindiki, they're 47. Let's say they're 47. Who's responsible for their death?
Who's going to take responsibility for having killed them? None of them.
And we shouldn't say they're 47.
Mind you.
Because they're more than 47.
Absolutely. Those who've been killed that we know about, mind you, they did not just drop down to the ground. They were killed. They were killed and they were disappeared. That's what has happened.
Yep.
Somebody took their life and nobody's being asked questions about why their lives were taken. And what was their crime? That they stood up and asked for a better Kenya. That they stood up and had the will to say, we can do better than this. And stood up and said, you know what, no. If I have to stand in the streets and protest, so help me God, I will. So that Kenya comes out of this better. And then you kill them. And you snuff out that voice, which is standing for transparency, which is standing for accountability, which is standing for good governance. And they're 47. Eric, even if it was one.
Yeah.
One is one too many. For us to go to sleep and wake up every morning and to continue counting that number one as though it did not matter, there is a fundamental problem. And that is continually the bane of this existence. Ask yourself why things are not going right. Ask yourself. Just ask yourself, why can't we just seem to get it wrong? Because what value do you place on life? Why is it okay for Morioki's mother to wake up today, again, September 30th, and ask, where is my son? Why is it okay that the 3 men who were let go from wherever they were being held, that every day for the last 32 days, their families, their wives, their daughters and sons, their fathers and mothers asked, where is my person? And then you below dignity, throw them at 3 a.m. in the morning, at 1 a.m. in the morning, as though they didn't matter. And then you put it back in the hands and the mouths and minds of Kenyans to continue asking the questions about where were they, who took them, why were they taken? What about those who didn't make it? Those who are under the ground now, those who are underground at the ages of 22, 29, one who is unknown. They didn't just drop to the ground and die.
They've died.
They were killed.
And lest we forget, nobody is answering for these deaths. Lest we forget. And we're talking about very many deaths. And there are agencies that are tasked with finding answers and bringing answers. And the longer it takes, we forget that the longer we are dragging the pain of those that are waiting for answers. Simply because we've gone 18 months without answers for Shakahola doesn't mean that Shakahola is over. Simply because we have gone so many days without getting answers for who killed the protesters in June and July doesn't mean that the pain is over. Simply because we do not know who those women were whose bodies were picked up from Kware doesn't mean that the pain is over. There are people who are looking for them. Those people were Kenyans and they deserve justice. And justice is just getting the simple answer. Who killed this person? How did this person end up in this quarry? That's what we are asking ourselves this morning. And lest we forget, these are still live and active cases. We're getting to a point where it's almost like we are normalizing death.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
A body turns up somewhere dead, mysterious, and we don't know what happened, and it sort of like goes. You know? Somebody is shot in the middle of the streets in Nairobi. Oh, they collapse and die. Then later it appears they were shot, and we don't know who shot this person in the middle of the streets in Nairobi. Very many cases of deaths that are unexplained and cases that are still open cases. More and more and more open cases. Some you can see, it's like what we've just been discussing. It is protests, people shot, people dead. Kithure Kindiki, the cabinet secretary, took on a lawyer's hat last week in Parliament and said, you know, as a law professor, I've got to say, the fact that somebody has turned up dead and shot and there were police there doesn't necessarily mean that they were shot by the police. That's one. There are people who just turn up dead in a quarry. 9+ bodies are picked up from a quarry, wrapped in gunyas. What happened to those people? We don't know. Bodies turn up at a river, Rivayala, body. How did these people die? We don't know. We move on. We fire the CID boss. We bring in a new Inspector General of Police. But it's like that case goes with them. And the people who died and turned up in rivers just move on. The people who die. So a university student takes a selfie in Parliament saying, Mr. Speaker, I am here. Turns up in a quarry as well, floating somewhere in some dam. We don't know how he died. We don't know how he left his university hostel. He just turns up there, dead. And sort of we move on. We're just adding into, if you die today, you disappear, you die, your body turns up.
No biggie.
They'll be like, okay, so that one died. Another file.
Okay. Another file.
We are normalizing the idea that somebody can just die and you don't have answers for it.
You know, the thing is, Eric, absolutely. And that's it. That somebody can just die. That's true. By virtue of the fact that we are living human beings, somebody can die. You can, and that's normal. What we're saying here, however, is that the abnormality of these deaths and the lack of questioning into what happened and the lack of holding somebody responsible for this is what is actually going to turn up the demons in this country.
Yeah.
That is it.
You can turn up dead, but there's no death that doesn't have an answer.
Exactly. There must be an
in hospital.
This person was sick.
Unwell. The doctors say, yeah, we tried our best. The person died while receiving treatment.
Yes.
Okay. You are in a vehicle. You're involved in an accident. You died. how did this accident happen? Those are the answers that are sought.
That's it.
It can't just be because, alikuwa kwa gari na ikagongwa ikakufa.
Even that, if somebody is walking in the street and collapses, the person will be taken to hospital and they will be said, okay, what happened? Did they have a heart attack? Did they have a seizure? Did they have a stroke? There will be an explanation
there has to be an
what
answer
happened
for
to
every
this
death.
person.
Even if you die in your sleep, there will be questions and somebody will have to come up with an answer and say, the probable cause here is this person was A, B, C, D. They suffered an aneurysm, they whatever, deep vein thrombosis, whatever
the case
this
may be.
is what caused the death of this person. You turn up dead somewhere and your limbs have been chopped off. Somebody has got to answer. Now, you know what? We have created in our institutions an institution whose job is purely that, to find out this person who turns up dead, how did they end up here?
How did they die?
Who are they? How did they die? And why? And that institution is the National Police Service.
I'm glad that
there's an Inspector General of Police.
Yeah.
There's a Director of the DCI.
I'm glad you've landed at that doorstep.
That is the person who we have tasked with saying, if somebody dies, you have got to find an answer.
And the assumption is already placed at your doorstep that because this person has died, you already do have an answer, but you are not giving it to people. The doorstep which you've landed on right now. Remember what caused all this hullabaloo around the three gentlemen who disappeared from Kitengela?
Yep.
And then we had this whole dog and pony show and this circus around deputy or acting IG at that time, Masengeli. The reason why this whole thing went into court the way it did is because there were no answers for these three gentlemen. They had been missing for around about 20 days. Nobody knew where they were. And by the time this whole circus happened is when they said, look, tell us where these men are. You do not show up in court to give us answers. You also then will be punished for what you have not done. On the 7th day of the summons, remember, he then presented himself to court. And remember the issue, and this is my problem, the issue around why it started in the first place was the disappearance of these three men. It was not discussed. We then had a new IG installed on that day before he went to court. And then on that morning, the next morning, these three men turned up. From where? Who took them? There's no such thing as coincidence, in my opinion, when these things happen. You know what has happened. You know who's responsible. You choose not to do something about it. And that's why I'm telling you, this problem is a lot more worse than we actually think. For which there is no penance for these things that have been done to men and women who've disappeared and those who've died. Their souls will continue to cry out for justice. That is just the way it happens. And it is, I implore, I beg that you actually do something about it, because the outcome will be much worse than this thing that we're talking about today. But that we've gotten to a place where we normalize. What happened in Kitengela 2 weeks ago? Bodies were being removed from a dump site and we looked at it as though it was no big deal. We looked at it and was like, oh, bodies, dump site, okay, they found some more. Okay. And it's okay. At what point do you get by that? You've become so numb. The walls of the heart are so callous that you look at something like that and it is okay. Why is it okay? Okay. So maybe a grotesque death has taken place. Somebody's limbs have been chopped off. Somebody's head, somebody has been decapitated. And we don't have to look for answers for it because it doesn't matter. Okay. Let's go to something that maybe will touch your heartstrings just a little bit more. 21 boys burnt to death in a school, because nobody may have gone and killed them, but the principle is the same. That 21 boys died in a school. They died from a fire which we know could have been avoided. Are you being given answers as to exactly what happened? Are you being told that this is what we are going to do to ensure that it does not happen again? Do you see anybody speaking up and saying, it will never happen again, not on our watch, that we are going to do every single thing we need to do to ensure that every child whose shadows darkens the four walls of a school, a boarding school in this country, is going to be protected? Have you heard? Have you seen? Have you? So it then becomes okay. 21 boys died and we'll bury them and it's okay. Whether it is somebody who's been decapitated, whether it's been somebody who's been dumped in a quarry somewhere and filled with garbage, or whether it's 21 boys who've died in a school, or whether it's 400 and something people and counting who are underground in Kenya today, the principle remains the same. That if you do not feel the urge or the need to give answers, to do something about it, to so secure your value and make sure that nothing like this ever happens under your watch again, until you do that, you're failing. Miserably failing, and you have no business doing anything else.
There's absolutely no excuse. We can play around with very many things, and that's what we are getting to. We are getting to normalize it and to make it sound like it's okay. But I want to remind us again that we have created institutions in this country, and those institutions are tasked with giving answers. It's as simple as that. I want to repeat, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you die. There will be an answer of how you died. Okay? It doesn't matter. You die in hospital, there will be an answer. This is what led to this person's death. And this one we can clearly see no foul play. Mm-hmm. If you just fall and collapse on the streets of Nairobi and you had a heart attack, and there has to be something that says, this is how this person died, no foul play, nobody culpable. If you die and there's foul play and there's culpability, then the next thing is the person culpable goes through a system called a justice system that we have established in this country that should answer that. And that's why I'm saying it's beyond the people who have been shot and we can see, okay, this one shot, most likely police. Sawa. It's beyond this person went and starved themselves. That's what we starved themselves in Shakahola and they died. Who's culpable? How did they end up there? It's beyond that. It's beyond Waini's family sitting there and wondering, how did our girl end up in this place that they say they found her? How did the body remain there, but the head leave and go all the way to Juja? It's beyond that. It's beyond somebody saying, oh, this person fell off a balcony and they died. So what happened? Did they jump? Were they pushed? What caused it? And the people who are responsible for giving us those questions, the National Police Service, bottom line. And when we don't give those answers, then we are normalizing. It's okay for you to die. Well, if you turn up in a river, we can just say, we give it like a whole national thing, or it's extrajudicial killings and it's police officers, and we have done away with that police officer. And in fact, the squad that was dealing with these things is that individual people must be accounted for individually. If it is 10 bodies that are found in Rivayala, those 10 bodies are 10 people. How did each of them end up there?
I've seen something, and I think that is actually the fundamental problem that we're dealing with today, and it irks me to think about it. When somebody says that you dramatize an issue too much, and that right there is the problem. Because what has happened is that it has become so normal that when you hear people talking about the loss of life in this manner and that nothing is being done about it, that you've been so scarred that it seems as though somebody's making noise for nothing. But how did we get to the point whereby lives can be lost in the hundreds every year, unexplained, and you get to the point where you say, you guys, that's just drama. There's the problem. That exactly is the problem.
It's drama until it comes close
to your doorstep.
It's drama until your brother, your father, your relative, your cousin, your uncle, somebody whom you are very close with, actually turns up dead in a river. Unexplained. After they went missing for an entire weekend.
Yeah.
And when you find them, you find that they were bludgeoned to death. And you don't know what happened.
That's when it ceases to be
drama. That's when drama
reality
ends. That's when reality comes in and you see it has come close to home. And that's why this idea of drama could be What I'm saying, we have normalized dying such that si alikufa.
Mnapiga kelele ni nini, si tutamzika. Okay, really? So actually, you're right. Maybe it needs to be dramatized for us to understand what we're really talking about here. That when you devalue, and we're going to use that word so many times today and as many days as possible, that when you devalue it so much that somebody can actually stand up today, and because somebody opened their mouth in a way that displeases you, you decide that the best thing that you can do is to keep them in the dark, waterboard them for weeks, and that you can torture them to the point of silence, whereby you've asked for a vibrant people who will demand a particular kind of leadership and governance, and that you can think that is okay. That people are afraid to speak out today because they do not know if they will sleep in their homes tonight. That people are afraid to go to the streets to demand for good governance in a place where you call democratic because they do not know if they will be dead tomorrow. That mothers and fathers are begging their children, please stay at home because I do not want to bury you tomorrow. In a democratic, robust space where things like this are supposed to be happening, that you can speak up about injustice and that you can demand that a better Kenya be there for the people that will come after you. In a place where these things are happening, that the dramatization of it becomes something that is necessary for you to see that this is not how things are supposed to be. The dramatization is necessary for you to see, I repeat, that this is not how things are supposed to be. That you should be able to look at a police service and find refuge. That you should be able to look to a police service and say, please, actually do help me. Not that I am afraid of you or that I weaponize you for my own selfish gains. That's a problem. And I believe that we are more warped than we can actually imagine if we think that it is okay. That for you to see a body being pulled out of a quarry and it doesn't touch you in any way because there's no explanation, then we have more problems than we can even begin to imagine. More problems. That nobody is accountable. Nobody is accountable for the theft of money. Nobody is accountable for the loss of life. So what are we accountable to and for? And then nobody has to answer. And you can do whatever you want, however you want it, to your own satisfaction. And you're a human being. Nah.
How are we getting so desensitized to many things? You know, we've gotten
so much.
We have become desensitized to things. For example, for a long time we have now been desensitized to the issue of millions.
Oh, it's billions.
If it's billions, okay. If it's millions, 100 million shillings for
only 100 million. Okay.
For national dress, okay. 200 million shillings for Kenya House in Paris, okay. Yeah, if it's billions, that's when. In fact, even in billions, 2 billion shillings, 1 billion shilling, you're like, one. You look at it as one. 100 billion shillings, okay, that's becoming a very serious figure. We are desensitizing ourselves as a society to very many things.
But how do you become desensitized?
Maybe that's City would say is a condition. That because you are so battered, you actually desensitize yourself from the pain.
Absolutely.
If you find the people who live in the streets, they have become desensitized to the condition. The fact that you go and pick food from a garbage pit and you're eating it, ordinarily you wouldn't do it. But it becomes part of your life so that now you no longer can smell it. It doesn't smell bad. Yeah. All you just need to do is eat it. It is so cold, it's been raining. Nairobi was raining overnight last night, right? It is so cold, it's wet, it's damp, it's everything, but you are a homeless person and you have nowhere else to go. You become desensitized to the vagaries of the weather. You're just looking for a place where you can shelter yourself.
And sleep and wake up.
You basically just numb everything off. We have gotten to a place as a Kenyan society where we are desensitizing ourselves from very many things. You do not want to accept that you can just imagine people dying and not found and disappearing and so you just you desensitize yourself to it. You're like, okay, wamekufa sawa, hiyo ni mbaya,
okay, sawa.
You move on to the next thing. You desensitize yourself to the issue of 100 million, 1 billion, 2 billion. You're like, okay. You desensitize yourself to the issue of children who are in grade 7 going into grade 8, going into grade 9. They don't know how they're going into grade 9. It's the same children. But because you're not in that situation, you do not want to put yourself in that situation, you say, okay. You desensitize yourself like that. That's why even today, unless you have a child in CBC, in junior secondary, if you hear at your grade 9 preparation in jeopardy, 3 months to roll out, you're like, okay, yeah.
No problem.
If you hear that, these kids are the same ones who got into grade 7, and for an entire term they did not learn because there were no grade 7 teachers, and then there were no books, and that they were being taught by their junior primary teachers who were just giving them revision work for an entire term.
After all.
And then they got teachers, and they got one teacher who's supposed to teach them everything. Because you're not in that situation, you're like, okay, yeah, move on.
They'll deal with it.
Because you don't have a child in university or tertiary who has to now look at this new funding model and how much they ought to cough. Because you've got private insurance and you're thinking, well, private insurance, I'm going to be using my private insurance. When I go to the hospital, I'll be fine. You hear moving from she to sha to she. Yeah.
No, it doesn't touch me.
We have, that's what we've become. And what is leading us to that position? What is it that's causing us be such kind of inhumane people? What is it? How can we just say, okay, yeah, they died. How many? And they're all women. And there are 9 bodies. And they're in a quarry. And they were in gunny bags. And they appear to have, blunt force.
Or mutilated.
And they were mutilated. And they died. Wow.
It's terrible.
And we move on.
Like that.
Ati that Kaboy, the one whose video is going around on social media, the one who was in parliament, Ati is the one.
They found him in water.
He was found in water. He died. Wow. We moved on.
Oh, 637 people total now have been found underground somewhere just past in Kilifi County. Underground, dead. What happened? Somebody took them to church. Then told them to starve and die. Children, yes. They're still digging up. Yes. There could be more than 637. Yes. How many have been identified? Less than 100. Where are the remaining? They're in storage somewhere waiting to be identified, DNA analysis. There could be more underground. Yes. Are we going to exhume more? Yes. What's going to happen? We'll know. There's a court case going on. Okay. Shakahola happened when? 2023. We're in 2025. But see, we want to elect a president in 2027.
Let's focus on that.
People died going to run away from a situation so bad that they had to go towards religion, which Karl Marx said is the opium of the people. They found their own opium. So, see,
they took themselves there.
They took themselves there under somebody, and then they died. Okay. Numb. There's a callus on that particular place. We'll deal with it when we need to. How many more do you want to keep piling on and piling on and piling on? And when did it become okay? My thesis is that it is not okay. And it will never be okay. It will never be okay, because those things that you've mentioned, it is the same abiding principle. Whether you're talking about death, whether you're talking about corruption, whether you're talking about pilfering, not just grandiose stealing of public funds, whether you're talking about just not doing your job because, who is watching after all. It's the same feeling that you say, somebody died. Okay. I have my own things to do. I have to finish. Same principle. And until you start to pick away at that principle and deal with it as it truly should be dealt with, we will continue to have these issues that we have. But we cannot forget that people have died, children have died, women have died, men have died, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters have died unexplained. And the people who took their lives are walking around free, and nobody is demanding any kind of accountability from them. And you say you have something in place that's going to safeguard the lives of people. It cannot be well. It must be sorted out. Those who committed these crimes must be brought to book and dealt with in the manner in which anybody else who committed a crime would be dealt with in this country. It continues to happen like that. We continue to have a problem so compacted that it's going to take decades to sort out. It's not okay to make people think that they have the upper hand when it comes to life. It's not okay. It's not okay.
And we cannot continue like that. We cannot and we shouldn't. Lest we forget, there are very many unexplained deaths that remain unresolved in this country. There are very many unexplained disappearances. People have not seen their loved one for days, for weeks, for months. All these things are happening in our country, and we are desensitizing ourselves from it. And we are saying, well, yeah, we move on. People are maimed. There are people who have suffered physical injury, lifetime injuries, no answers given.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.